of what the Lord's done for me. So it's kind of going to be more of a personal testimony along with word scripture here. We'll see how this rolls. But so in Psalm 40, we're going to read verses 1 through 5, and these are the verses that came to me. And I've said it before, but these verses here, everybody gets verses that they can relate to or tells the story of their life, I guess. Well, these verses right here tell the story of my life, and I'm hoping a real good writer, storyteller, could get this stuff to come out, and as they were going through this, these verses would pop out and you'd be able to pick them out, and it'd be a really good message and all that, good to go. But you got me. It's going to be a struggle. But here, we'll start in verse 1. It says, I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry. He brought me up also out of a horrible pit, out of the miry clay, and set my feet upon a rock, and established my goings. And he hath put a new song in my mouth, even praise unto our God. Many shall see it, and fear, and shall trust in the Lord. Blessed is that man that maketh the Lord his trust, and respecteth not the proud, nor such as turn aside to lies. Many, O Lord my God, are thy wonderful works which thou hast done, and thy thoughts which are to usward, they cannot be reckoned up in order unto thee. If I would declare and speak of them, they are more than can be numbered. All right, so with these verses here, as I'm trying to go through the story of my life and where I'm at to this point, your guys' job is to try to pick out these verses. So there's going to be verses here. He brought me out of the horrible pit. So then there's going to be verses where he established my feet. There's going to be verses where he put a new song in my mouth, and many shall fear it. So there's going to be, these verses have a lot of just what my life has been about. So you're going to have to try to grasp those. That's why I said a good storyteller would be able to perfectly put that out there, and y'all could just pick up on them as we go. But we're going to give this a go here. So I grew up in Iowa. That's where I was born. I'm the youngest of three. I got two older sisters. One lives here. One lives out in Nevada. I remember going to church with my grandparents. My grandparents owned a farm up in northern Iowa, and there was this Lutheran church out there, very rural Lutheran church, and I can remember sitting next to my grandma. I always sit next to my grandma, and she gave me those little chiclet gum. Anybody know what those little chiclet gums are? Those little hard, squared candy? And she used to give me those. And those were my first, I guess, about the best recollections I have of going to a church. Okay, not a true church, but a church. So when they moved to town off of the farm, I don't really ever remember going to that church that was next to them in town. But, okay, so my dad's job moved him here to St. Louis so he could stay close to my grandparents because he was the only son of three. So he had to stay close to where my grandpa they use on the farm. So we moved here to St. Louis. So as an early teenager, I started going to the middle school and got into playing football and wrestling. And later on there, formed a core group of our friends. There's like 5 of us together. We had outside friends, but there was 5 of us that were extremely close. And from there, as we grew older and us core group grew closer, we all did the same things, played football, wrestled, went to the same school, all of that. We started experimenting, and so here we go. Here's the verses here where it says he brought me up out of a horrible pit, out of the miry clay. That's the world and sin. So, anybody, that's the world and sin. So from there, in middle school into high school, we started experimenting with drugs and alcohol at a young age. So then got in more into high school. Football and wrestling's going real well. Wrestling's going real well. But because of the experimenting with the alcohol and drugs, I was never good in school, okay? English, spelling, and math, horrible. Had to get a tutor to help me with my spelling to make it into high school. So when I got into high school, school started failing. Started seeing all my achievements in my sports starting to fail. So I started to think less of them. Started getting more trouble with the law. Then I got in trouble. Little by little, I got more trouble. And my parents get me out of trouble. Well, the lawyer would get me out of trouble. Put the money to the lawyer, and eventually got myself into too much trouble where that didn't happen no more. And along with that, getting in that trouble, I got a new job at a place I currently work at. And things were going okay there. And then I also met Becky, my wife, and got myself in too much more trouble. And this time I couldn't get out. We in and out, trouble, and this time now I've got myself landed in the Missouri Department of Corrections. And there's no getting away from that. And this day and age, I still have several of these things. You guys can't see them, but this is my name badge that was on my clothes, like my shirt. It's got my number on it, and it's got where I was put at. And I keep that for a very reminder of where I came from. So I don't, through this message, going to get down here a little bit more. Right now we're in that miry that clay, that mucky mud that you can't get out of. Like if you're on that riverbank and you get in that mud and it just pulls your boot right off. It's that sticky. That's that sin that I'm talking about now. So entered the Department of Corrections at the age of 20, and here gets to be some of the good stuff here. We're going to start to get out of the so sorrowful stuff. I'm sitting in my cell block, and my bunkmate's got this Bible, okay? And this guy's name's Twin. He's got an identical brother, matched himself. They're both in prison together. Not together at the same place. They made sure to keep them separated, but both in there together. His name's Twin. He gives me this Bible. It's well used. It's just a New Testament. I don't know why I thought he needed to give it to me, but he gave it to me. So I read a little bit in it, here and there. I had to come back to St. Charles County to take care of some court cases. And from there, you couldn't leave your cell block at all. You were stuck there. And a guy came in. He had a guitar on a Sunday morning. And I was in my cell, and he was singing praises to the Lord. I'm not a Baptist, but it served a purpose. The Lord can use people, whether they're saved, whether they even go to any kind of a so-called church. The Lord can use people. So this guy's in there singing praises with the other cellmates out there, jailmates, and I'm sitting in my cell praying to the Lord to take care of my parents and my Becky at that time. As far as leave me alone, Lord, I've done too much. Just take care of my parents. So that's where the point where I was at. And then they went back to Fulton. And inside the corner over there was some shelves, and there was Bibles, or not Bibles, but books. And I was rooting through them one day, and I found this Bible. And this one's brand new. Okay, New Testament. Just the New Testament Bible, just like the one I just had. But this one was brand new. And here's kind of the interesting point where the Lord starts working on this point. The one I had, and at that point, I didn't know any difference between Bibles. it was just some odd version, don't even know what it was. But this brand spanking new one that was sitting over there on the shelf was a King James Bible. And I was like, I want this brand new one. This one's all messed up pages. All this other one was brand spanking new, so I swapped them out. And the Lord knew what he was doing there to get me the right Bible. And of course, I didn't know it at that time. So a lot of this going through, I never recognized this stuff until years later when somebody's like, hey, tell me this, or tell me a story of that, or tell me that. And I'm reading through it, going through it, and I'm like, Lord was working there. The Lord was doing something, I didn't even recognize it. Well, of course, then I was lost, so I wouldn't recognize it. But even years later, I still didn't even know it till, some of the stuff, even when I was trying to go through this, I'm like, wow, the Lord's really done things I didn't even realize. But so then they moved me out of Fulton. Fulton's just a reception. You go to Fulton, little Department of Correction information here. Fulton's just a reception area. You get sent there. They figure out your education, your age, your crime, your time, your your medical status, and then they can ship you off to where you need to go to after that. So they sent me to Boonville because I'm young. I didn't have an education because I dropped out of school. Kids don't drop out of school. My kids will know that for sure because my wife and I are hard on them. Because we see the potential in them, so we're going to make it come out. You can ask Sarah that one the most. She will definitely tell you I was not easy on her. But now I'm in Boonville, and this guy comes, just a preacher out of nowhere, comes into the housing unit and sits down, starts talking with us. And from there, I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to go to the chapel. So I went down to the chapel some weeks later and met another guy. I named a brother Carol Schonals, missionary chaplain to the prisons. And him and I hit it off real quick. I learned a lot of things from him. Shortly after I started going to that chapel is when I was saved. I was doing I can remember I was doing a Bible study, kind of like we'd say, like right here at the step or whatever. I was just up there doing it in the chapel, and one last sin, I guess, if I can say, that I was kind of holding on to. The Lord got me right there and then with it, and when I gave that to him, it ain't gonna be the same for everybody, but when I was saved, it felt like a ton of bricks just lifted off of me. Just like gone. All that weight was gone. And I can remember getting up and running straight into his office. And such a good time to rejoice. But I learned so many things from Brother Carroll. He's a missionary chaplain to the prisons. He works through a place called the Rock of Ages Prison Ministry. He's an independent Baptist. He's out of Boonville, Illinois. Well, I guess that's nearest town. One thing he taught me is, I like to say it, is you hang out with a skunk long enough, you're going to start to smell like one. And that was a good lesson to who I was going to hang out with when I got out. So a lot of what he taught me was, when you get out, here's what you have to do. So he held some good Bible studies there every week. He even started his own treatment course there, and I took that and learned so much about myself. And so we're up out of that that clay. And the Lord has set my feet on a rock, and that rock is, we all know, is Christ. Just not any rock, but it's Christ. And now he's established my goings, and the Lord is blessing. And I will say this, that in my life, 45 now, and that time I spent at Boonville was some of probably the best time I've ever had in my life. And I know that sounds odd to say because here I'm in prison, but being able to just have the time to read my Bible and pray and be around other guys that were doing that too, and then to have the mentor like Brother Carroll was, it was just a good time. It was good. It help me to reflect, and Brother Carroll gave me all kinds of tools to show me how to do stuff and to help prepare stuff in my life for when I got out. And so I was thinking I'm going to get out at this point in time because I got enough stuff done. I've been a good guy, never got in trouble in prison. I will say this, I did tell everybody that was around me, housed around me, I was like, look, I want to get in, I want to get out. I'm not here to cause no trouble, and I don't want no trouble. So if you're going to do something, just let me know and I'll leave. And everybody else had respect for that, so I was able to keep my nose clean and stay out of trouble. Of course, you know, at that point, the Lord's blessing. He's taking care of me. And so go to the parole board, thinking I'm going to get released and come home. And no, they decide I need more and set me off to more treatment, their treatment center. So the best words Brother Carroll could say to me at that point, because nobody thought that was going to happen, is just go get it done and go home. He already told me that the place was spiritual dead and it was going to be rough. So go up there, and boy, is he right. I think a treatment center would have some kind of spirituality to it, but that place was spiritually dead. We did have one guy come in, older gentleman, Baptist preacher, came in for a few weeks, about a month, and then just stopped coming in. Good guy. I don't know who he was, but boy, I tell you what, he had the truth, and I was like, okay, man, this is looking up a little bit, but I don't know what happened, but he stopped coming. So it was really dry in that place, and they were not very friendly up there. But I was able to witness. To a Muslim. He was in the same, they have us in families up there, and you basically have to stay with that family the whole time. And there's a Muslim in my group, and he came up to me, approached me, and asked me about creation. Okay, so I knew a little bit about it, not as much as I know now, but he asked me how the animals got so big back in that day. And so I kind of got to explain a little bit about how, before the flood, things were different, atmosphere was different, everything was different. And I was like, I don't really know a bunch. I said, but this is what I can tell you. And he respected that because I didn't try to just come up with something. And from there on, that gentleman and I, for the rest of our time there, were able to form a friendship and had a mutual respect for each other. Neither one of us went after each other's religion with each other, but we were able to talk and just, hang out. So there was some good that came out of there. Also with that is being able to stay in contact with Brother Carroll was very limited because they didn't like inmates trying to stay in contact with people like that, I guess, with other folks working inside the prison society. So every piece of mail, every Bible study I would get from him had initials on it. Every page, the lady had to sign that when she checked it to come in, to make sure that there was no foul play going on. So spiritually dry, a place run off participation of ratting out your fellow person, but calling it your brother's keeper. So participation was a must. So I tried to get on the board of my family. I had council members for each family. I was like, I need to get in here. I need to get out. I need to get some participation. I'm not going to sit here and do all this, do that. So I got on the board. If I remember right, I tried for the spirituality coordinator, and they would not put me on that. The staff wouldn't approve it. The family never approved it. So I did not make the spot I wanted. But the spot I did get was the service crew coordinator, which is basically like the lead janitory spot, which was a paid position. And it was one of the highest paid positions in the whole camp. So I made $15 a month. But it got me on the family council. It got my participation without having to do it the other way. And I basically breezed my way through that program. And the one thing they said they did not like in that program was hiding in the woodwork. Because then you were allowed to sit there and get not working on your character flaws. Well, Lord blessed. I basically hid in the woodwork and got through there and got home. So Lord blessed there. I learned some stuff. Got home, spiritually dry. Figured out how to work through some stuff. But with a release from there, Brother Carroll said to me, he goes, you need to find an independent Baptist church. So even this guy that I ain't been able to see in over a year is now still telling me what I need to do when I get out. When the Lord's here, he's starting to establish my goings through all this, I guess, training, we will say. I come out, I get home, I put on house arrest, 4 months. Becky and I start trying to find a church. Went to that two different one different one in Warrenton, two different ones in Warrenton. And I believe it was my mom found Independence Baptist Church in the phone book. And from there, that was day one of coming. Ain't searched out another church since. Lord knew what he was doing. But with that, I had to get permission to go to church from my parole officer because I'm on house arrest. So they tell me to bring in one of them, what are they called? Like little bulletins. A lot of churches hand out when you first come in. It's got like the services and all that stuff on it, what they're going to do for the day. I don't know what you call it anymore. Little pamphlet. And I'm supposed to get one of those and bring it back every week to the parole officer so she can see that, I went where I said I was going to be, because that thing's got an ankle monitor on my ankle and GPS, it follows me. So I go to Brother Wayne. At the first time I'm there, I'm like, first time I'm at services. Here we are, Becky and I, younger couple, mid-20s. All y'all are new. Small church. Everybody's friendly. I have to go to the pastor and ask for a bulletin so I can turn this into a parole officer. I'm like, hey, you guys got bulletins? No, we don't hand those out. No, I'm going to have to tell him when I'm here what's going on. I have to tell Brother Wayne what's going on. And he's, let me do this. How about we give a track and I'll sign it? I'm like, that would be perfect. So here, we can relate that down here. I'm not seeing this at first. I don't ever notice this, but this is what's going on. I'm just thinking I got to do this to get out of trouble, or to make sure I can keep doing what I'm doing. But later down the road, it comes down here, and we can see that it's a witnessing tool, because now I'm having to hand that track to my parole officer. And these just ain't any tracks. These are tracks that Brother Wayne's written. So I know they're truth. This ain't just sugarcoating. So we got a witness going out here to my parole officer, which I never dawned on me till much later in life. But that was my first time having to tell somebody that, hey, look, I'm on house arrest. I got ankle monitor on my ankle. I just got out of prison. and I'm here, and I need some kind of written thing to give to my parole officer so I don't get in trouble saying, man, I'll tell you what, church, Independence Baptist Church, most of y'all are here. I don't think anybody even cared. Brother Wayne was tickled with it. Oh, no problem, we'll do this. Kept coming back, and I'm sure I didn't really say nothing, but I'm sure probably Wayne might have said something later down the road or something to some folks, but nobody seemed to care. And that was my biggest worry. I'm coming out of prison. What are people going to look at me on? But this church didn't care. It didn't seem like they cared. They welcomed us in. After I got off house arrest, everybody's like, come on over for dinner. Like everybody just, let's do dinner. So I found the church, and I found the people, and the Lord showed me it all. So with taking in them bulletins to the parole officer, at first my parole officer was kind of hard on me. I don't think she believed that I was saved. I don't think she believed that there was salvation was even a real thing. And you know, in her respect to her, one of the biggest things that you can get out of prison is jailhouse religion. And it's good while they're in jail, and then it fades away when you get out. And she'd seen it 100 times, over 100 times. It's just the way it is. So, you know, kept going, had to keep going in there, had to keep turning them bulletin boards or them bulletin papers in until I got off house arrest, and then I just went to once a month. She was tough on me at first, then she started easing up, little by little. You could see a difference. And down here in verse 3, and it says, many shall see it in fear and shall trust in the Lord. And there'll become another point in time where that verse comes true. So I'm going to the probation or my parole hearings, meetings, and she stops drug testing me little by little. So now she's starting to not even be worried about me. The rest of their clients are getting drug tested, and I'm coming in and walking right out, and they're like, what's going on here? I'm like, I don't know. Another instance, sitting in there in her office, and the police come in. And they come into her office, and they're standing right behind me, and I'm like, okay. And the guy goes, you're not nervous? I didn't do anything. Well, I got to be nervous about, you know. And they're like, well, you're not here. They're not here for you anyways. I'm like, that's good. There was another point there where we got to talk about Christmas with my parole officer. And not just Christmas like, hey, we could do this. It was the side of Christmas as I've got a paperwork 2 inches thick on all the reasons why I don't celebrate Christmas. And she was like, well, what about your family? I said, well, they still celebrate it. And she's like, what are you going to do about that? I was like, I don't know. We'll figure it out when the time comes. Just the way it is. So I was able to witness, I guess, if you could say witness, not really witness, because in her line of what she was doing, kind of it was a thin line where you couldn't do much. But she could see a change, or she could see an actual change and not what many other people said they had. And by the time it was said and done, she didn't even really care about me anymore before it was done. She was to the point where she just wanted to put me where all I did was called in once a month. But she was too busy to get it all done, so I had to finish going to the office. But it didn't bother me one bit. It didn't bother me. But in all that there, we know all that before I was off parole, Becky and I got married. We'd had Sarah. Didn't have a driver's license. That was part of what I was in trouble for, so they took it away. My former employer having troubles at work, so I had to go look for a new job. So I went back to my old job. It was right after 9/11 had happened, and in that industry it slowed down to nothing. It wasn't much work. I went in and talked to my bosses, our former bosses. Their dad had now gotten sick and had cancer and wasn't able to come in anymore. Time I got home from O'Fallon back to Rice City, they had called the house and offered me a new job. Getting paid what I was getting paid when I left. Shortly after being there, their dad came in to see me when I was working in the plant, sick with cancer. Came in strictly from outdoors, walked outdoors, walked straight in the shop, walked over to me to see me. Guess he wanted to see the change. Apparently, from what I hear from one of my so my company's run by, it was the parents, and now both the parents are passed away, so they're two brothers and the sister run it. But apparently, the one brother told me that his dad had always liked me, so he was really eager to come in and see me. But when I went back to work, there were some verses. I'm gonna read it real quick. In Colossians. These were the verses I went back to work with. If I can get there. Colossians chapter 3. We're going to start at 22. And it says, servants, obey in all things your masters according to the flesh, not with eye service as men pleasers, but in singleness of heart, fearing God. And whatsoever ye do, do it heartily as to the Lord, and not unto men, knowing that of the Lord ye shall receive the reward of the inheritance for your service, for ye serve the Lord Christ. But he that doeth wrong shall receive for the wrong which he hath done, and there is no respect of persons. But when I went back to work, where I'm currently working at, that was my goal, was to work that job for the Lord. At this point, I had just gotten married, so now I had a wife. It's not me no more. So I wanted to do this job, and the reason I say this is because now, 23 years later, still working at the same place. When we got slow during the recession, my bosses took me to their farm to work on their farm and invited me into their homes to do work for them out there, while the guys at the shop were getting 32 hours minus, some days not even pouring any concrete at all, and that's what we do. They got me out on their farm working 10 hours a day, not willing to let me go, but to use me however they can use me. And if that was to sit there and cut down trees and clean their house. Of course, I did that. Well, their cabins, I guess. They have a big fishing tournament, and they have people stay at their extra houses, so they needed to be clean. So it was raining one day. I got all kinds of stories, but we don't have enough time. But so they've done that because they saw a change, and they'll tell you that. And that part of that change I mentioned earlier with the other folks, and people will fear it. They'll see it. Folks see that, all right? So folks that knew me from before at my work, they saw the sinful, well, still a sinner, but the worldly side, okay? The stuck in the pit and the miry clay Andy, that's who they saw. And when they saw me come back 3 years later, there was a change. And they saw it. And that was because of the Lord blessed there. You know, the Lord does all this. I don't want to be, hopefully this don't come off that I'm like bragging that, you know, I'm who I am, but the Lord has done, and that's where the glory is. But in the meanwhile, I was able to get my driver's license back. Here's another part to show that the change that the Lord has done. I had to go to court to get my license back. I get this lawyer, thinking this should be pretty simple. Cut, dry, easy. Just got to go in and say, hey, I need my license back. Go in there, and the current lawyer I have is going after the judge's seat. The judge that's over my position. So I got Brother Wayne's here now too. He came to court with me. But yeah, the lawyer I hired is going after the judge that's got to give me my license back. More interesting is that same judge that's got to give me my license back was the prosecuting attorney that sent me to prison. He saw the change. He said he wouldn't give me, I had to get a breathalyzer put on my vehicle. He said he would not do that, except where he had to. He saw the change. Lord can really change lives if we let it. Now, Lord has really blessed me in the other areas and other things. I'm just trying to hit some of the points that go along with these verses. Much as the Lord has blessed me, unfortunately, I have to say, I think I've also failed Him, you know, with my own failures, because I'm just a sinner. But the Lord is blessed. But here recently, another thing where the Lord is blessed, that Jim and Carissa got called off to go preach down in, to be a pastor down in Kentucky. That left their house open. They needed somebody to fill it. So Becky and I and Sarah were able to move in, get our own place for a while. And after a while, we're like, I think it's time to move out. Work was slow, but we needed to go. Got all this place all set up. We're going to get it done. Guy shows me the last price, and he goes, here's what your monthly mortgage payment's going to be. I didn't like it. It was $300 more than what I wanted to spend a month. And the guy convinced us, sat us down in the couch on the display house and said, hey, this is what you just got to step out and do it. Sometimes you just got to step out by faith and do it. The salesman's convincing us to do this. So we did it. A month later, I came back to that salesman and signed some whatever final paperwork, and I told him, the Lord has blessed so much that I can pay my monthly payment in 1 month now, or in 1 week. The Lord had given us so much work at work that I was able now to pay my whole monthly, or my mortgage payment in 1 week at work. And it's been going like that all the way up till this year. We finally now just started slowing down. And that's probably some of that do with some of the being in the prison, keeping to myself, and being at work, why I'm not so much of a social person. Because I would come home from work, catch up on the daily activities, and then go to bed and go back to work. But the Lord is blessed. And Lord is definitely took care of me. We might not have the greatest of things, but He is blessed and took well care of us. And with that, I see myself and my kids, and I say, pray for them, please. And my daughter, especially, she is exactly me, just a woman with much more brains, a lot smarter. But her attitude personality, everything of her is me. And I can see myself in my boys. And I just pray that the Lord will bless them, that keep them from, save them and keep them from the trouble that I've gotten myself into. And I know this isn't so much of a normal message that you guys are used to. I tried to sit down and I tried to go through these verses, and I can show you, you won't be able to see it. But on this side of my paper, I tried to go through here, these verses, and actually make like a message that uses all the verses and isn't so much of a personal testimony message. And it just couldn't do it. I don't know how Wayne could sit there and study like that. I'd sit down and my brain can't do it. It is so difficult. I'm so used to being up and moving, and I drive a truck and run a crane for a living and use earth moving equipment, and love to use my chainsaws. Man, it is so difficult to sit down and figure this out. So, Wayne made a suggestion to go through and just kind of give your testimony. And I was like, well, that's about all I can think of anyway. So I guess maybe that's what I was supposed to do. But you're here today and you're lost. You trust the Lord. And I'll tell you what. You're here today and you're lost. And I stand here and I tell you that I got myself in all that trouble. You don't have to be in that much trouble to be lost and need the Lord.